Before I start the video, I want to say that a lot of people watch my videos without a subscription. If my content resonates with you, you could subscribe to the channel. Thus YouTube would promote it more, which in turn would motivate me to release and improve content more often. Thank you. Selling my Mazda Miata on Craigslist was one of the most stressful experiences of my life. It all started 4 years ago when I decided that I needed to get rid of my car. I had loved that little convertible, but it was time to upgrade to something more practical. So I asked my friend to help me take some pictures of it and put them online. At first, I was excited to hear from potential buyers. But as time went on, I realized that most of them were older men who didn't seem to have read the description of the car at all. They would call and ask me basic questions that were clearly outlined in the ad. I started to get frustrated, wondering why someone my age wasn't interested in my car. As the calls continued, they started to get creepier and creepier. One man in particular called me and insisted on meeting me at my house to see the car. I tried to find a public place, but he wouldn't budge. He didn't even ask me about the car, just kept asking where I lived and what my cross streets were. It was unsettling, and I started to feel like I was in danger. Finally, I hung up on him, but he kept calling back and asking where I lived. I was so scared that I went online to remove the ad, and that's when I saw it. My friend had taken a picture of the car that had me in it. I was mortified. No wonder these men were calling me. They weren't interested in the car at all. They were interested in me. I immediately took down the ad and decided to keep the car for a little while longer. But every time I saw it in my driveway, I was reminded of the creepiness that I had experienced. I couldn't wait to get rid of it. Fast forward 4 years, and I was ready to sell my car again. This time, I was determined to do it right. I took my time with the ad, making sure that it was detailed and didn't include any pictures of me. I'd also made sure to only respond to serious inquiries. To my surprise, I received an email from a young woman who was interested in the car. She asked all the right questions and seemed genuinely interested. We set up a time to meet in a public place, and I felt a sense of relief that I hadn't felt 4 years ago. When we met, she took the car for a test drive and fell in love with it. She didn't ask me any personal questions, only wanted to talk about the car. It was refreshing, and I knew that she was the perfect buyer. As we filled out the paperwork, I couldn't help but think about the experience I had 4 years ago. It was a scary time, and I felt vulnerable. But I learned a valuable lesson. Selling something online can be dangerous, and it's important to take precautions to protect yourself. In the end, I was happy to have sold my car to a young woman who appreciated it as much as I had. It was bittersweet to see it drive away, but I knew that it was going to a good home. And most importantly, I felt like I had closure on an experience that had haunted me for years. It was a typical Tuesday morning when I walked out to my truck and realized that something was off. I could see that the driver's side door was slightly ajar, and as I got closer, I noticed that my laptop was missing from the passenger seat. I'd left it there the night before, forgetting to bring it inside with me. I was livid. I had a lot of important work on that laptop, and now it was gone. I immediately filed a police report, but they told me that they probably wouldn't be able to do anything about it. I was frustrated and felt like I was out of options. But then I remembered hearing stories about people finding their stolen items on Craigslist. It was a long shot, but I decided to give it a try. I searched for laptops in my area, and sure enough, there was one that looked just like mine. It was being sold by someone in a town a couple hours away. I couldn't believe it. It was like fate was handing me an opportunity to get my laptop back. I messaged the seller, pretending to be interested in buying it. I asked him to send me some pictures of it to confirm that it was in good condition. When the pictures came in, I knew without a doubt that it was mine. There were a couple of distinctive stickers on the front that I had put on myself. I couldn't believe my luck. I had found the guy who stole my laptop, and he was trying to sell it online. I contacted the police and told them about my discovery. They were hesitant at first, but I showed them the pictures and convinced them that it was worth investigating. We set up a sting operation at a local Starbucks in the town where the seller was located. I was nervous as I walked into the Starbucks that day. I didn't know what to expect, and I was worried that the seller might recognize me. But as soon as I saw him, I knew that it was the same guy who had stolen my laptop. He looked like he was about 16 or 17 years old, and he seemed nervous and fidgety. The police were watching from a distance, waiting for the right moment to make their move. I approached the seller and asked to see the laptop. He handed it to me, and I pretended to inspect it while secretly memorizing the serial number. As I handed the laptop back to him, the police came rushing in. They handcuffed him and took him outside to search his car. It turned out that he had a bunch of stolen items in his car, including weapons and other electronics. I was relieved and proud of myself for catching the thief. It felt like justice had been served. The police took my laptop back to the station and confirmed that it was indeed mine. The thief had even left all of my files and documents intact on the hard drive. It was a surreal experience, but I was grateful to have my laptop back. I learned a valuable lesson about keeping my valuables safe, but I also felt like I had done something good for society. The thief was punished for his crimes, and I was able to move on with my life, knowing that justice had been served. I remember the day my friend told me about the Craigslist robberies happening in our neighborhood. It wasn't long before I started hearing rumors and whispers about the same thing. But it wasn't until a few weeks later that I realized just how close to home it had come. I was sitting at home, scrolling through Craigslist, looking for a good deal on a new phone when I came across an ad for an iPhone 5. The price was a little too good to be true, but I thought I'd take a chance and contact the seller. We exchanged a few messages, and he agreed to meet me outside the elementary school at 3 p.m. that day. I didn't think much of it at the time, but looking back, it was a pretty sketchy location. The school was closed for summer break, and the area was pretty deserted. I arrived a little early and waited nervously, scanning the area for any signs of trouble, but it all seemed quiet. Then I saw him walking towards me with a backpack slung over his shoulder. He looked young, no more than 18 or 19 years old. He had a friendly smile on his face, and I let my guard down for just a moment. That was when he pulled out a gun. It all happened so fast that I barely had time to react. He grabbed the phone out of my hand and ran off into the distance, disappearing around a corner. I was in shock, frozen in place as I tried to process what had just happened. I didn't know what to do, so I went home and called the police. They took a statement, but they didn't seem too hopeful about catching the guy. It wasn't until a few days later that I heard the news. The same guy had robbed several other people in the area using the exact same method. He would post an ad for a phone or other expensive item, then arrange to meet the buyer outside the school. The police had finally caught up with him when they responded to his latest ad. They set up a sting operation, and when he arrived to make the sale, they arrested him on the spot. They found a loaded gun in his backpack and discovered that he had planned 6 more robberies in the coming weeks. It was a relief to know that he was finally off the streets and couldn't hurt anyone else. But it was also a stark reminder of the dangers of buying and selling things online. From that day on, I made sure to take extra precautions whenever I met someone from Craigslist, and I always met them in a public place where there were other people around. It's a lesson that I'll never forget. But even more than that, it's a lesson that I'll be sure to pass on to others who are looking to make a deal on Craigslist or any other online marketplace. Because you never know who you're dealing with, and it's always better to be safe than sorry. I remember the first time my friend told me about his experience with Craigslist. It was a cold winter evening, and we were sitting in his cozy apartment, sipping hot cocoa, or catching up on our lives. My friend was scrolling through his phone when he suddenly exclaimed, "Hey, check this out." He showed me a post on Craigslist for a vintage record player that he had been eyeing for a while. The seller was offering a great price, and my friend was eager to get his hands on it. I could see the excitement in his eyes as he dialed the seller's number and made arrangements to meet him in a deserted parking lot. As he hung up the phone, he turned to me and said, I hope this goes smoothly. You hear so many horror stories about Craigslist deals gone wrong. I tried to reassure him, telling him that the vast majority of Craigslist transactions went off without a hitch. But deep down, I knew he was right to be cautious. After all, there were plenty of unscrupulous people out there looking to take advantage of unsuspecting buyers. The day of the meeting arrived, and my friend drove out to the parking lot, feeling a little nervous but excited to finally get his hands on the record player. As he pulled into the lot, he noticed a shifty-looking man hanging around near the entrance. The man looked him up and down, then disappeared behind a building. My friend waited for a few minutes, but the seller didn't show up. Just as he was about to leave, his phone rang. It was the seller. "Hey man, don't come. I was just going to rob you, but I heard some kids in the background when we were talking on the phone." My friend was stunned. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had narrowly avoided becoming a victim of a violent crime. He immediately called the police and reported the incident, giving them a description of the man he had seen in the parking lot. But as far as he knew, the seller was never caught. From that day on, my friend was more cautious about his Craigslist dealings. He always insisted on meeting in a public place, and he never went alone. He also made sure to tell someone where he was going and what he was doing, just in case something went wrong. As for me, I was grateful that my friend had come out of the ordeal unscathed. It was a sobering reminder that we should always be careful when dealing with strangers, especially in the murky world of online transactions. But despite the risks, my friend continued to use Craigslist. He had scored some great deals over the years, and he wasn't about to let one bad. My name is Michael, and I was in a similar situation to Brian Butcher. I had just moved to a new city and needed someone to share rent with. I posted an ad on Craigslist, and after a few days, I received a message from a guy named David. We talked on the phone, and he seemed like a nice guy. He was in need of a place to stay and was willing to split the rent with me. We agreed to meet in person, and I gave him the address to my apartment. When David arrived, he seemed a little nervous and kept looking over his shoulder. I didn't think too much of it at the time and showed him around the apartment. He seemed impressed and said he liked the place. We talked about our interests and hobbies and seemed to get along well. The first few weeks went by without incident. David kept to himself, but I figured he was just getting used to living with a stranger. However, things started to get strange after a while. David would spend long hours in his room, and I could hear him talking to someone on the phone, but he would always hang up as soon as I approached his door. He also started to come and go at odd hours of the night. I started to worry that something was wrong with David. I didn't know much about him, and I was starting to regret letting him move in. One day, I came home from work early and decided to check David's room. I knew it was a violation of his privacy, but I needed to know if he was okay. I tried the doorknob, but it was locked. I knocked on the door and called out his name, but there was no answer. I decided to try my spare key, which I kept hidden in case of emergencies. When I opened the door, I was shocked to see the mess inside. Clothes were strewn all over the room, and there were empty pizza boxes and soda cans everywhere. As I started to clean up the room, I noticed a manila envelope sticking out from under the bed. It was bulging and had my name written on it. I hesitated for a moment before opening it, but my curiosity got the better of me. Inside, I found my tattered credit card offers and a sheet of paper with the names and addresses of my family members. My heart started racing as I realized that David had been going through my mail. I searched through the rest of the envelope and found my credit card information and passwords to various websites. It was like a strange dossier of my personal life. As I was looking through the papers, I noticed a diary on the nightstand. I hesitated for a moment before opening it, but I knew I needed to find out what was going on. As I started to read the diary, my hands began to shake. The entries were all about me and my daily routines. David had been watching me, and he knew everything about me. As I got to the end of one of the entries, I found a chilling sentence. I'm just now beginning to experience fear every time someone looks at me twice in the street. Every time a policeman looks at me, thinking they know. I knew I needed to get out of the apartment and contact the police. I grabbed my phone and quickly dialed 911. Within minutes, the police arrived at my door. I explained the situation to them, and they searched the apartment for David. However, he was nowhere to be found. The police took the evidence I had collected and started to investigate. It turned out that David was using my identity to apply for loans and credit cards. He had also been involved in several petty crimes around the city. The police eventually caught up with him and arrested him.